This is a Let's Talk Church Safety and Security microsode with your host, Paul Buckner.
Hey, sheepdogs. So, on the vein of don't create danger, something that one of our defensive tactics instructor was talking about, going back to a prior video, but I really like that. There's such good stuff to unpack here. Is we have this innate need to run up and lay hands on somebody as humans, and go grab this person if they're doing something they shouldn't. And so I'm going to give you a scenario. You're at your church. Somebody has been really out of control, and for whatever reason, it's escalated to the point that they're now at gunpoint. They pulled a knife out. They were at a far enough distance that you did not feel compelled to shoot them, because contrary to the myth, if you draw your gun, you do not not have to shoot them. But you draw your weapon and you point it at them, and they go, "Whoa, hey, I don't want to die." And you, at that point, you are detaining them. You're not to use police parlance, but you are holding them at gunpoint until law enforcement arrives. So law enforcement's on the way. You've got folks communicating with law enforcement. Hey, there's this dorky Paul Buckner guy over here. He's got this person at gunpoint. You do not know. Humans are apex predators. This is something that our defensive tactics instructor has been saying a lot, and I really like that. You do not know what their skill sets are. Humans typically are going to use force multiplication tools. They'll have a knife or a gun on them, but some people are just unbelievably dangerous, even without martial training. Even if they don't have fighting skills, they're just really, really wildcat dangerous, and you don't want to back them into a corner. So there are people that if you touch them, John Riley talks about a situation where the church literally just grabbed a hold of a guy that was like, "Don't touch me." Okay, so if you're going to escort somebody out of a building, which is what that basically came down to, why do you need to touch them? And somebody went up and was like, "I'm touching you." Why? And there can be a very deep psychological need in a person. I'm controlling you if I'm touching you. And a lot of what we think of as control is not, and that's something that really has been brought home to me in the police academy, is a lot of what we perceive as having control of somebody is actually not control at all. We really don't control. In most cases, we don't control somebody without their being willing to be controlled. And I know that sounds weird, but think about it. There are people that have a mental disconnect when it comes to pain, and I've experienced it in a fight protecting a cop, 3 cops. But anyway, they are reacting in a very feral manner, and they're very, very dangerous. And I mean, I dislocated the guy's knee, and he just kept fighting. He was high as a kite. He attacked the officers, and he was a bear. He's a beast to fight. Just putting him in an armbar wasn't working. Trust me, it wasn't working. There are people that are like that because of a mental problem, because of a drug rush, because they have a mental disconnect to pain. And then there are people, I mean, I know a guy I was talking to recently that he was talking about the fact that he's like, "I've made a promise to myself that nobody is ever going to beat me up in a fight." And I said, that's an almost impossible thing to be able to live up to. It's almost impossible for you to be able to do. And he's like, and I said, here's what I'm saying. If somebody blindsides you with a baseball bat and you're unconscious, they're going to beat the brakes off you. And he's like, there's always somebody tougher. And there are people that's their mindset is, if you lay hands on me, I will hurt you. I will tear you up. I will stomp a mud hole in you. There are people that's the way they think. And so let's go back to our scenario. Somebody is prone down on the floor. They are not presenting, currently, they are not openly presenting a threat. We've proned them out, whatever your favorite is. One of my favorites is ankles crossed, brought up to your backside, arms straight out to either side, palms up. It's difficult to get up from that position. And it takes conscious thought and effort, as one of our DT, our defensive tactics instructors, talks about. They had a plan when they started to get up like that, so they're telegraphing intent at that point. So, coffee, my old friend. When they are telegraphing intent and they are reacting that way to us, we are adding more time. We're buying a moment to realize that this person is coming up off the floor. This person is continuing to present a threat. This person is dangerous. So let's go back to that person prone down. Why do we need to rush up and grab that person and hold them to the floor? If they're actively fighting us on the way to the floor and we can restrain them on the floor, okay. But if they're on the floor already and they are complying with the commands, get on the floor and do not move or I will shoot you. If we have articulated that clearly and loudly, please stay on the floor. I do not want to shoot you, but I will. And they're not resisting. Why do we need to grab them? Because one of the most dangerous points for a police officer is handcuffing, because you go to put hands on somebody and they're like, nope. And they respond violently. And in close to somebody, they can be very, very dangerous. And some of our DT instructors are terrifying to go hands-on with up close. And that's why if you have to do it, you want more bodies. And I don't care how tough we think we are. If somebody hits us in the windpipe and we're gurgling, we're probably going to be somewhat less effective in the fight. And also, people keep weapons on their bodies. I know that's not rocket science, but we've got to wrap our minds around that. If I'm going to go up and grab somebody that's already compliant, that's already on the floor in our church foyer, and they came in and they're like, I need everything to do with God and I need everything to do with your church, and I'm here to make God pay, and then they've got a baseball bat and they drop it because they realize, oh crud, this is not a soft target. These people will fight back. Uh-oh. If they've decided to comply, if we go to lay hands on them and they spin around with a knife and they split me open side to side, and as I clutch my gut and I go to the floor, now we have multiple problems that we didn't have before. Now I'm going to need emergency surgery if I even survive the next minute. If they've laid me open wide enough that I'm going to hemorrhage out, I'm going to exsanguinate on the floor, we've now created danger that was not there before, and we've actually created a worse situation than we were dealing with moments before. If we don't have to create the danger, then why do we do it? And it's a sad thing about human nature. Sometimes we have something to prove, and sometimes we just believe that if I lay hands on this person and I'm holding them, they're no longer a threat, when actually they spin around on us and all of a sudden we've taken 2 shots to the chest. And this has happened again and again and again to law enforcement as they go up to handcuff somebody. It's one of the most dangerous things that law enforcement does. So if it's that dangerous for police officers and we've already got the person proned out, I have to ask you, chew on this, think on this. Why do we need to do it? Because we're not cops in that environment. Now, I will be a law enforcement officer in a very short amount of time, but whoopity-doo, that doesn't have anything to do with what I'm talking about. In that environment, we are not police officers. If they are compliant with what they're being told to do, and they are no longer a threat, why lay hands on them? And again, if somebody goes back into a corner and they've got a knife in their hand and they're 35 feet away from anybody, and we've got 5 weapons pointed at them, and they're in a corner of an environment where we can't just let them leave for whatever reason, they're pinned back in there. If we can't safely create a way for them to leave and observe which way they went, get a good description, maybe keep eyes on them. If it's an environment where maybe they have to be held there, whatever that scenario is, why do we need to close with them? It's part of why you need to be competent and confident in your weapon skills. Notice which order I put those in. Competent because you know what you're doing. Confident because you've been training. That confidence comes from the fact that you know where you put those rounds, where you point that weapon is where those rounds are going to go without fail. If you're able to do that from that environment, and you're able to say, Mr. Buckner, I don't know why you came in here with a knife, whatever. Mr. Buckner, I need you to put the knife down. I do not want to have to shoot you. Law enforcement is on the way. If you throw that knife down, there's a good chance you won't even get tased. But brother, you're not going to hurt anybody here today. If you're able to articulate that to them, at that point, why do you need to lay hands on them? And again, going back to escorting somebody out of the building, the person stood up in the middle of the class, they stood up in the middle of whatever, and they're saying and doing things that they need to be escorted out of the building. Why do we need to reach over and lay hands on them and hold them? I've literally escorted people out of environments just by saying, if you'd step this way. And you can escort them out, maintain some distance. Don't create a reverse wedge, if they're here and you're able to walk them out and have a nice day, or try to have a better day, whatever. I like try to have a better day over have a nice day. Something I learned from one of the instructors at the academy that I like that saying. But if we're able to articulate, this is, right at the front doors here, we'll get you out of here. You can maybe be gone before law enforcement even gets here. We're creating an impetus for them to leave, and then they're not able to move out of that. We have a reactionary gap, and we're kind of doing a reverse wedge, and we're kind of moving them towards the door, and then we're keeping people back from them. It just amazes me sometimes how many people feel like they need to lay hands on a person, and it also lets you maybe keep somebody else from injecting themselves into the situation. Interjecting, I like that word, but I really like the word injecting, because to inject into something, you have to take pressure and push into it. In this case, maybe that pressure wasn't needed there, and maybe that pressure is going to cause something else to burst. We don't need to inject or allow other people to inject themselves into a situation that was maybe handled. And that's one of those things. It's also really hard when somebody's walking away, and I've seen this done so many times where the situation was over, and as somebody's walking away, they're like, yeah, well, you and your mom are stupid. And now it's back on. Yeah, buddy, well, that's your opinion. And now it's on. Yeah, well, you're lucky you didn't do anything stupid. And now it's on. Don't create danger. If you don't have to go hands-on, don't. I don't care how high speed you are. I don't care if you're a double dip ninja. And here's the thing, you may be the most competent person on your team with your martial prowess. You're a Golden Gloves boxer. You win 100% of the fights that you don't get in. If you need to prove something, take a step back and go, what is it I need to prove here? Because if I need to prove that I'm a bad news bearer, I need to rethink that. Don't lay hands on if you don't need to. Create an environment for the threat to leave. And I'm not talking about an active shooter. That's not what we're talking about. And then don't create danger by your body language. Don't create danger by the way you look at people. And don't create danger by what you say. Sir, if you don't leave, I'm going to stomp a mud hole in you. Sir, we don't want anybody hurt today. Law enforcement's on the way. If you would step this way, there's a good chance you could actually be gone before they get here. That is a much better, potentially a much better response to a situation than, listen, I will break you. Don't create danger. We can literally ramp things up unnecessarily. So I'm getting ready to go get some grub and study for a test I've got coming up Monday. I've got some stuff I need to knock out. And so say a prayer for me. I covet those prayers. God bless.
If you enjoyed this microsode, check out the video and audio versions of the Let's Talk Church Safety and Security podcast.